Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Wolfgang Dansbeck-Gruber. I'm the director of the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination at Princeton University, and it is my great honor and really personal pleasure to be able to welcome Dr. Khalid bin Mohammed AlAttiyah here to this august table at Dodds Auditorium at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. And I do so with great pleasure in the name also of the Woodrow Wilson School and in the name of the various programs like Near Eastern Studies and Muslim Life of Princeton University, who graciously co-sponsored the talk. As I mentioned before in our various conversations during this afternoon, first of all, it is absolutely a delight to have a foreign minister of any state taking the leave of absence from, as they call it in New York, the crazy week of the General Assembly of the United Nations. We both were over there this morning, and anybody of you who were there last couple of days knows what I'm talking about from security onwards. But it's a particular delight to have the Foreign Minister of Qatar basically saying, would we like to talk with each other, and could I talk with your students, and would your students or faculty be interested in talking with me? And I have to be honest, number one, you rarely hear this from a serving foreign minister. Number two, it is really such an honor and pleasure to invite a foreign minister with his absolutely superb team, notwithstanding in this case Ambassadrice Al-Thani who is the personal representative, or the permanent representative, yes, and the personal representative also, of Qatar to the United Nations. And I said obviously yes. But then the next exchange was, but we want to have a serious, interesting and non-polemic conversation, and then I was delighted, as you all know. So the Foreign Minister of Qatar has offered to address us and then to discuss with us the situation in the region, in and around Qatar, and in the world. And
wonderful.
as I always say to my students, both young and old,
Really great. Thank
you
you
are
so much.
experiencing a moment of history in the making. We don't know yet where we go, but we clearly know that this time now is different than last year, same time, and the years before. The tone of the speeches in the United Nations General Assembly lend ample evidence to this statement. It's a particular pleasure for me to introduce to you all somebody who is actually in many ways, through his career, a symbol, what one can do. Khalid Mohammed AlAttiyah was trained as a fighter pilot, as an Air Force man, and graduated from aviation studies. And then he did the law degrees, like myself, all three of them, up to the D laws, where he actually graduated in tort liability of public authorities and the English rule. But besides that, he was also trained inside and outside Qatar, namely in Cairo University and in the Beirut Arab University. And after his legal service and after his direct military service, he began establishing his law firm, and throughout his law career, he was, and I found this absolutely fascinating, both in public finance, public services, infrastructure like water, which in Qatar may not be that unimportant, as well as in the area of science and technology, where he served as a member of the board of director chairman of the executive committee. And then he entered himself into real estate in Qatar, until he was, to the month precise, 3 years ago, nominated to be Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and member of the Council of Ministers. And basically, some 15 months ago, he entered a profession, I don't say repeat now, sir, what you said before, which intensified, shall I say like this, your activities, and now you found time to be with us and to talk to us, and I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome the Foreign Minister.
This is Professor Dansbeck-Gruber, distinguished faculty member, dear students and friends, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here today and address such a prominent audience. Moment before entering this hall, I had the privilege of walking around campus, admiring its beautiful Gothic architecture. For a century now, this university has been educating future leaders, thereby making a major contribution to global peace and security. An enduring vocation best captured by school's motto, Princeton in the nation's service and in the service of all nations. When the Woodrow Wilson Schools was established in 1930, the world was arguably witnessing similar event to what we are seeing today. A global economy burdened by debt and struggling with growth, a world deeply marked by the past atrocities of war and yet incapable of stopping new forms of evil. Dictators and enemy of humanity, terrorizing women and stealing from innocent children the bright future they deserve. We are once again living in a time of profound instability, a time of great uncertainty, but also, ladies and gentlemen, a time of tremendous opportunity. Perhaps a true embodiment of transformation meets opportunities is the country I come from, the state of Qatar. A country which by the year this school was established was indeed far from what it is today. At the beginning of the 20th century, Qatar was a country with tremendous natural resource, but it lacked the capacity to tap them. It was formed by a small set of villages, mostly dependent on pearl-cultural livestock and fishing. With the collapse of the pearl trade in the late 1920s, coupled with the Great Depression of the 1930s, the disruption of food supplies to Qatar led a massive migration throughout the Arabian Peninsula. In the years that followed, the situation got even worse. And when the Second World War interrupted international trade, a significant portion of our population actually died of hunger. With malnutrition and only a handful of doctors available, a staggering number of deaths took place, especially among women giving birth. The discovery of oil, however, marked a turning point in Qatar's history. Government entities, public service, infrastructures, schools, and hospitals were no longer out of reach. Export revenue transformed our economy and society. In no time, Qatar became a prime destination for many foreign companies and investors, particularly from the United States. The evolution set Qatar on a rapid course of development and modernization. Our Amir visionary and courageous drive to a pioneer LNG technology quickly positioned Qatar as a global market leader. Many strategic relationships were born in the process. A key partner of Qatar oil and gas industry, US company, played a major role in that development. ExxonMobil and Chevron Corporation are only two of many examples. Today, Qatar leads global LNG export, and enjoy the world's third largest natural gas reserve. A long way indeed from our time as pearl divers. Along with economic prosperity and exponential growth came the need to better prepare our youth to a changing and more competitive world. Yet again, we turned to our American friends, and together we established a leading educational cluster in the city of Doha. Education City now provides a constellation of top academic programs ranging from engineering to law, medicine, and even graphic design. Serving students from 85 countries, it is a perfect reflection of our country's drive to establish a knowledge-based economy for the future. Perhaps one day we will be so lucky to even have Bristol joining us there. Like education, sport represent another key area in our national vision, as both of them hold great transformational capacity. In a region that has known so much pain and tyranny, perhaps sport could indeed serve as a catalyst for positive change. This is why, among other reasons, we work so hard to bring the World Cup FIFA 2022 to the Middle East. You might hear voice arguing that Qatar should not be hosting this event because of climate condition. All despite the advanced and proven technology the country invested in over the past decade, allowing this dream to be realized. This cynical voice, ladies and gentlemen, are the mere reflection of parties that simply cannot digest the fact that an Arab Muslim country will be hosting such an event. But surely, the universality of soccer is something we can all agree on. Dear friends, needless to say, America and Qatar are close commercial partners too. Both countries signed a trade and investment framework agreement back in 2004, which was greatly strengthened our bilateral trade. As we speak, the US representing Qatar's largest foreign investor and its largest source of imports. With over 120 American companies operating in Qatar, US export to Qatar reached $3.8 billion in 2013, almost doubling from the year before. Our trade relations remain strong, and they are meant to keep growing. As you well know, the current situation in our part of the world is very serious. The state of Qatar, like many other Arab countries, strongly believe in the stabilizing role that the United States can play in the region. It is therefore natural that our two countries will closely cooperate and coordinate on military and security matters. Doha hosted the AlAttiyah Air Base, home of the forward headquarters of the US CENTCOM. Last July, Qatar and the United States signed an agreement worth of $11 billion of military equipment, further cementing our strategic partnership. Energy, education, commerce, and security represent the main material bond between our two nations. But dear friends, America and Qatar share more than a history of collaboration. They also converge on a similar aspiration for the future. Common values and approaches in matters of international affairs are indeed numerous. Allow me to delve into just a few. First and foremost, our two countries believe in peace and are committed to its promotion everywhere. A recent example of that, of course, is the close working relationship forged between Secretary Kerry and I over the recent conflict in Gaza. Actually, our cooperation goes back even further, and it has been a pleasure to support his effort in the Middle East. As you may know, Qatar has been promoting peace between Palestinians and Israelis for several decades. Qatari diplomacy played an important role during and after the 1993 Oslo Accords. We have remained committed to the peace process throughout especially the Arab Peace Initiative. The fact of the matter is, Palestine is the last remaining item on the United Nations decolonization agenda. It is about time Israel realized that the security of its people will only be achieved through peace and the end of occupation. Nevertheless, our unconditional support for the Palestinian cause in the face of aggression has never been blind to the necessity of dialogue. The critical mediation role played by Qatar during the recent war in Gaza serves as a proof of that. Maybe some of you will even remember that Doha hosted an Israeli trade mission for almost 10 years, a fact that a lot of people seem to have forgotten these days. Ultimately, we believe that international peace and security can only be achieved through a dialogue based on the principle of equality, compliance with international law, and respect of human rights. Palestine has always been our first cause and the first cause of the entire Arab people, but Qatar's long-standing engagement for peace has known many other theaters around the world. Perhaps this gathering of bright IR students will know about our role in brokering a peace agreement in Lebanon back in 2009, or the critical part played by Qatar diplomacy to solve the 2010 border dispute between Djibouti and AlAttiyah, or again, our contribution in Darfur culminating into the 2011 Doha document for peace. Dear friends, Qatar will never spare any effort to find peaceful solution and avoid bloodshed. To achieve that, our country will continue to listen to all parties and always give everyone a chance to be heard and to be respected. We might be somewhat extremes in our thirst for dialogue, but we cannot apologize for it. This is what we call our open door for peace. Focused on conflict resolution at a political level, this policy often takes a more human dimension in the form of a strong commitment to saving lives, even at the individual level. Hence, Qatar's silent but effective work in the release of numerous hostages over the years. This includes, among many others, the recent liberation of the Syrian nuns, the 45 UN peacekeepers from Fiji, and of course, your fellow countermate Peter Theo Curtis. Sometimes criticized, this important and complicated role should neither be questioned nor taken for granted. A second area of strong convergence between our two nations is the clear dedication to reaching out to those less privileged than us. Both Qatar and America share a long-standing commitment to humanitarian assistance and foreign aid, whether directly through US aid or within multilateral organization or collaboration, has always been close and based on a mutual trust. A relationship also strengthened by teams of hardship. Back in August 2005, Qatar did not wait a single moment to offer its assistance to US Gulf Coast victims of Hurricane Katrina. Established just a few weeks after the disaster, the Qatar Katrina Fund supported critical recovery initiative in Louisiana and Mississippi. Totaling $100 million projects include emergencies, relief, healthcare, education, housing, and even places of worship. Over the past 5 years, Qatar has provided humanitarian aid of about $2.2 billion in addition to non-governmental aid of about $390 million. Our development assistance reached over 100 countries with a particular focus on conflict area and post-crisis situation like Japan or Haiti. Of course, Qatar solidarity has played an important role following the Arab Spring in helping build more inclusive society. Our illustration of such commitment is Tunisia, where the Qatar Friendship Fund recently launched an ambitious entrepreneurship program. In that, we are encouraged by and will always welcome similar US-backed initiatives in the region. A third example of common principles between Qatar and America is our shared belief in people's right to self-determination. Stated explicitly in Article 7 of our permanent constitution, this commitment takes an even greater meaning when such aspirations are geared toward justice and freedom. It is in this context that one should understand Qatar's support for the emerging democracies that came about post-Arab Spring, supporting Arab people as they liberated themselves from the grip of dictatorship through peaceful means, was not only our political responsibility, it was our moral duty. In line with this principle, Qatar extended its full backing to all democratically elected government across every Arab Spring nation, equally and without differentiation. As a result of this policy, Qatar became the target of various parties which held different views and which did not favor the political outcome of the Arab Spring. In addition, my country became an easy scapegoat for parties that did support the democratic process post-Arab Spring, but perhaps did not go as far as acting upon it. In that regard, it was interesting to note the sharp contrast in rhetoric between the celebration days of revolution on the one hand and the tepid support to complex political transition on the other hand. In the end, this democratic process were both necessary and critical. Unfortunately, it is obvious that we, the international community, failed in supporting this evolution. In fact, I would dare say that the international community failed the people of the Arab Spring. The fact of the matter is political transition always takes a long time. Following a history of authoritarian rule, I wonder if the democratic opening made possible by the Arab Spring were truly allowed to unfold. Indeed, it is simply unrealistic to expect any society to rebuild their governance model and democracy process overnight. The case of Tunisia, which finally adopted its new constitution last January, it's a perfect example for that. And here, I would like to congratulate our Tunisian brother and sister for proving to the whole world that through unity and mutual acceptance, rebuilding an inclusive, deserved and pluralistic country is possible. Generally, we should have a deeper appreciation for the long term and approach with more patience the organic process of institution building, and that to avoid even greater injustice and even bigger challenges down the line. Ultimately, the state of Qatar is not interested in diplomatic bickering or pointing fingers. It cares about people and the condition in which they live. I believe this is yet another value that we share with the American friends. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, terrorists in Syria only flourished in the swamp of violence created by the regime. The state of Qatar had warned from the beginning that inaction to address the root of the problem would strongly aggravate the situation. Today, the international community stands with no clear vision or immediate roadmap out of this crisis, and the Syrian people remain stuck between the tyranny of the regime and the terrorism of extremist groups. The fact of the matter is terrorism can only be defeated in its social environment by giving the Syrian and the Iraqi people a stable alternative that ensure and protect their rights, their dignity, and their freedom. Dear friend, to the naked eye, Qatar may be challenging case to fully understand, especially in the context of non-stop media bashing fabricated by hired guns and few lobbyists. Such strong aspiration to grow, to engage, to be heard from such a faraway nation in the Arabian Peninsula, such a different perspective on political issue and conflict resolution too. In many ways, Qatar is an interesting metaphor for the Middle East and its future, full of youth and ambition, hungry for development and progress. In a place like America, one will turn to pillar like the founding father or your treasured constitution to better understanding the country soul. In Qatar, our foundation and our future are secured by long-standing tradition of eminent and wise leadership, a legacy made of experience, compassion, moderation, and enlightenment. Today, this rich heritage is embedded in the person of our Emir, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, leader of our people, architect of our national vision, and guarantor of our cohesion. Under his vision and leadership, Qatar is pursuing its journey toward greater prosperity and social well-being. And while our country is undergoing rapid development, our path remains on one of peace, stability, and sustainability. A direct consequence of singular trajectory as a country, the state of Qatar cannot conduct a proud and independent foreign policy devoid of an external influence. It does not follow the bloc mentality that is prevalent in the Middle East, whereby parties choose to align themselves with one camp or another, directly or indirectly. Our principle and value have not changed over time and are passed on from one generation to another. Qatar makes its own decision and follow its own path. In the word of our Emir, we don't live on the sideline of life, and we do not go adrift without a destination. We are a people with a vision. Far from negative rumors, our diplomacy is not shaped by media outlets, partisan, think tank, or anybody else. It is autonomous and grounded in established principle. Perhaps Qatar is a subject of so many attacks because it refuses to follow a predetermined scenario or be forced into a specific role, whether regionally or internationally. Perhaps Qatar is disturbing parties interested in the status quo because it does not fall automatically into one ideological group or mechanically respond to outdated partisan consideration. Indeed, criticism is often the price to pay for standing up and following one's beliefs. But unfortunately, for our detractors, the independence of Qatar foreign policy is simply non-negotiable. In the end, Qatar has simply taken a different stance in the aftermath of the Arab Spring, supporting people and government that resulted from this revolution. Qatar chose to accompany and assist the democratic process which were unfolding in the Arab world and which focus on improving people's lives socially, economically, and politically. Other parties saw it differently, and we respect that. We simply believe that there is great value in constructive disagreement and honest divergence of opinion. While we regret unfair criticism, we feel equally entitled to our own opinion, our own perspective, and our own decision. Dear friends, before I close and we move to the Q&A, allow me to say a final word on a notion that I believe animates both America and Qatar today. An insight that may help explain some current misunderstanding or possible insecurities. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very concept of change. The old turn of the century, Princeton shows little resemblance to the Princetons of today. Obviously, the same holds true for the region I come from, the Arabian Gulf. The world September 2014 is in fact a totally different place. A world that is changing rapidly, constantly, and often at the pace that is difficult to understand. Just over the past decade, my own country probably experienced the highest GDP and population growth rate globally. Adapting to such evolution, we all know, is no easy task. In many ways, Qatar is still coming to terms with this dynamic, but I would also argue that the same is true for America. A country that is both leading and being shaped by globalization. I can appreciate that this could mean for a nation with such a broad history. Jobs changing, continent by a stroke of a pen, information being exchanged in a nanosecond, the composition of society evolving, new strategic partners, new geopolitical architectures, and indeed new economic realities. All these changes bring about great opportunity, but they also usher in some fears. Ladies and gentlemen, the world was not always so. In fact, if I had addressed an audience of your peers back in 1912, when John Hegel took over as president, surely I would have been looking at a different crowd. Today, we see different nationalities, greater social diversity, more economic inclusivity. In a nutshell, a more accurate reflection of America's society and indeed a more accurate reflection of our world. This is for the better, and I don't think anyone here needs convincing. And there, friends and colleagues, lies another great in creation of the bond between our two countries, another exciting window into the constant enrichment of our respective nation, to which we stand deeply committed. This value will continue year after year to strengthen our relationship and to deepen our friendship. I have no doubt whatsoever that both Qatar and America will be able to adapt to this changed world and to make the most of it. Actually, I have news for all the students in attendance today. You are the reason why I am so confident. The cultural bridge that will apply their skills and passion to better understanding people of different backgrounds. The bright men and women who will draw the fine yet critical line between honoring the past and inventing the future. And the next generation of diplomats who will ensure that all voices are heard and that all aspirations are respected so that peace is truly given a chance. A celebrated Princetonian and former Secretary of State John Foster Dulles once said, "The world will never have lasting peace so long as men reserve for war the finest human quality. Peace, no less than war, require idealism and self-sacrifice and a dynamic faith." Looking at this room, I could not feel more optimistic or more excited. I wish you all the very, very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Can we walk up to the mic?
Yes, please, walk up to the mic. Before I offer, please come. And, I would like to tell you, sir, that in November 2 years ago, we had His Eminence Mar Gregorius Johanna Ibrahim, the Archbishop of the Syriac Orthodox Archbishop of Aleppo, sitting here. And you all know that on April 22nd last year, he was kidnapped. And I would like to express on behalf of many Syrians the gratitude to whatever is undertaken. And so it was very touching when you spoke about the possibility which Qatar has as an intermediary in negotiating So with this now, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'd like to thank the minister for coming all the way down here to Princeton. It was a pleasant surprise to actually see this venue after my classes.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Renee Shalom. I'm a sophomore here. And my question for the minister is, can democracy and peace exist in the Middle East so long as there are religious regimes, so long as there is a Jewish state or Islamic states? Does Qatar believe that peace and democracy can exist?
You want to take question by question?
No, if you want to answer this.
No, I can answer that. Of course I can answer. Surely they can live together. 1400 years ago, Jewish and Muslim lived side by side. This is exactly what we are trying to encourage everyone in the region to come together and force for a dialogue who will end up with a real peace in the region. Without peace in Palestine, I think the whole world will be always in turbulence. So yes, we believe, indeed.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming to speak to us today. My name is Andrew. I'm a junior here in the Year Student Studies Department. My question is, does the departure of 7 Muslim Brotherhood leaders from Doha and Qatar's decision to participate in airstrikes on the Islamic State with Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan reflect a changing strategy or changing considerations for Qatar? And if so, what does that mean for Qatar's relationship with entities such as Egypt or Hamas?
Thank you very much. This is a very complex question, but it's a Muslim Brotherhood living in Qatar has nothing to do with the ISIS in Iraq. The member who was living in Qatar, they were seeking safe haven in Qatar, and when they decided that they would like to practice their political agenda, they didn't want to embarrass, Qatar, because our laws do, provide you shelter if you fear your life, if you want your safety, but does not allow you to practice your political agenda from Qatar. So when they decided to practice their political life, they didn't want to embarrass Qatar, so they left with their own will from Qatar. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
The first part of it.
Here's the first part of the question.
Okay. What is the second part, sorry?
The second part is, do recent actions indicate a changing strategy in the region or changing considerations?
Well, let me tell you this. I don't think that airstrike or fighting terrorism from the air will solve the problem. The problem has to be addressing the roots. And the root is we have to focus on the Iraqi and the Syrian. And they will do the job, just to enhance them, give them their rights back. They've been marginalized for a long time. So it's about time to work together to let them feel that they are participating and they have the right in their country, and then they can do the job on the ground.
And in reference to Egypt?
Egypt, this is very difficult, very difficult. What's about Egypt again?
I was just wondering if there are changing considerations or strategies in regard to Qatar's relationship with Egypt.
No, our relation with Egypt, we never had in our stand in Qatar. We started supporting our brothers in Egypt after the 25th of January. So since General Tantawi came in, the military council, and as we speak today, we are still supporting Egypt financially. As I speak with you today, we still have some fixed deposit and bonds in the Egyptian financial system. So for us, Egypt is very important to be healthy and strong, economically speaking. So when we help Egypt, we help the people of Egypt and not party or individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mademoiselle, we have a young colleague from Libya here. Delighted to
Hi,
have you.
how are you? Thank you so much for visiting us. We're honored by your excellency's visit. So I'm a master's student here in public policy, but I'm also an attorney. And I wanted to just ask you kind of a logical, analytical question about what the Islamic State kind of represents ideologically today in the eyes of the Qatari government that is new or particularly, we'll say, damaging to world peace or to specific political stability in the Middle East, and how that's different than any other group, whether it be Hamas or Al-Qaeda or any other organization that we designate as a terrorist organization.
I'm a Muslim, and I guess you are a Muslim too.
I'm a Muslim, yes.
Yes. So, and I don't think any terrorist group represents our ideology, the moderate ideology. So, knowing Islam, then you can tell if their ideology is aligned with the peace message which Islam is all about, and if they are purely terrorist. So the distinguish is different. But talking about Hamas, I think Hamas, in our opinion, they are a movement of liberation. And we don't consider them terrorists. Okay, we have differences with our friends and allies in America, but in the end of the day, as Ambassador AlAttiyah earlier said, it's more that there is other European country who recognize them as a liberation movement, and we would like you to picture this. I would like you to picture, what if this Hamas changed by other type of, group or party. Hamas today are much closer to dialogue with the Israeli and to accept peace agreement with the Israeli. 3 days ago, if I recall, Musa Abu Marzouk, one of their leaders, have announced this on TV and said that I think dialogue is possible. So this is the thing we want. We want to encourage them, and we want them to be involved in the dialogue. Tell you something. Sorry if it's long, but I have to make this.
Thank you.
10 years ago, we received a request from our friends, the American, and at that time it was Condoleezza Rice, if I recall. And they encouraged us and urged to participate and convince Hamas to participate on the election at that time, 2004, I guess. And we spoke to Hamas, we asked them to participate, and they said, what guarantee if we win that people will deal with us? So we went back to our friend, the American, and we said, well, this is the situation. They says, no, they have the guarantee that if they participate in the election, they will be, identified. They won, and you know what's happened later on. But the question is, what is different between Hamas 10 years ago and Hamas now? I think having someone, Hamas is a part of the Palestinian composite. So I think they have to be contained and join and encouraged to join the peace process, because in the end of the day, if we reach to a peace agreement, which we all like to see in the Middle East, then this part are included in and endorse that peace agreement. So they don't come back again later on and says, well, we weren't part of this agreement, so this agreement does not concern us. This is how we look at things.
Hi, thank you again for being here. I wanted to ask about a question about Syria and Iraq. I know that you and your government have mentioned many times the need for Assad to go, and we all, I think, have read a lot about the horrible atrocities that his government has committed. But I think as we study these issues, we also hear a lot from US policymakers and Americans on the issue, concern about what happens after Assad is gone. So I'm just interested as we think through these issues to hear about how you and your government think kind of the core pieces, some of the basic questions. How does the international community ensure that there isn't a reverse backlash against the Alawite community, against those who've supported Assad but civilians? What happens to the Kurdish region of Syria and Iraq? Who is al-Nusra and other groups that some ISIL, are they allowed to be a part of the governing structure? And also one idea that we've heard floated around is, could the Gulf states take a lead in managing and potentially funding some sort of post-conflict reconstruction effort?
Thank you. No, I agree with you. I think the international community has an obligation towards Syrian and the Syrian people, and they have all to make sure that the institutions are protected. But on the other hand, let us not forget that the regime of Syria acted as a magnet to this terrorist group. They weren't there when the revolution started. 6 months they started with their bare hand and calling for a peaceful change. He faced them with heavy, shelling and bombing. As we speak today, there is over 250,000 dead in Syria because of the regime. So we have to be focused on this. Who's responsible for the chaos in Syria is the regime. And knowing Syria and the Syrian people, I'm sure so many of the audience here know Syria very well. Before the war started, the Syrian people, they don't distinguish between Alawist or Christian or Ashuri or Armenian or Muslims. They have a very fantastic mosaic among the people. So these messages or these rumors are serving the regime purpose. No one can believe that the regime comes today and call to join the ally to fight the terrorists. He is the creator of the terrorist. And we should not, be ignorant of that. But yes, we should support them and help them to keep their institution. They have to keep the army. We don't have to go and do the same mistake we did in Iraq earlier. We should not dismantle the army. We have to keep the institution of Syria intact. And this is, I think, the way that the international community can participate and help with it.
Certainly, if I might ask a follow-up question, I think we all can agree that the Assad regime is quite implicit in the situation right now and has committed a lot of horrible atrocities. I was just wondering specifically if you have any thoughts on how a transition would be managed and what role the Gulf states might play in that.
Well, everybody has a role to play in Syria now. Syria is much bigger than just the Gulf state but I believe dialogue is important now. No matter what we say about Syria, at the end of the day, it has to be a political solution, no doubt. To have this political solution earlier, I think all the big players should come to the table, and force everyone to that table, even if we have to use Chapter 7, Security Council resolution, under Chapter 7, to bring everybody to the table and force this political solution. Because no matter how long this stays, in the end of the day, they will solve it at the table. So better to solve it now before they solve it after 1 million dead.
Permit me to jump out here a second from my old chair and follow this question and ask you here, I know that's not off the record obviously, but I believe very much that dialogue has to be done with Syria. But we both heard Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, on Saturday in the General Assembly, and it became very clear that for Russia, Syria is of particular importance. So, would you have any response to your colleague Sergey.
I don't disagree with Sergey, but what I say is that Russia have interest with Syria, not with Bashar al-Assad. So the interest of Russia is with the Syrian people. This is, yes, right, I can agree that. And I think the Syrian people will protect any country interest, because they are not, they know that in the end of the day, they are not going to live in a box. They are they are an international community, they are a member of United Nations, and they have to deal with everyone, and they know that in the end of the day, there is interest to have to be protected, both ways.
Yes, Millie.
I'm Lisa.
Can you introduce yourself, please, and go a bit closer to the microphone?
Okay, so my name is Sarah. I'm from Princeton, New Jersey, but I actually am a graduate from Georgetown School of Foreign Service in Qatar. And I had a question on, do you think that the foreign policy of Qatar has effect on its knowledge-based economy? And for example, for Qatar, their knowledge-based economy, one of the requirements or parts of it is to kind of attract international students for any, even like employers, employment, anything like that. So do you think the relations from the outside or outside the West looking into Qatar, do you think that the recent events, it looks less attractive to come to Qatar now? And do you think that has an effect in the long haul on the knowledge-based economy?
Good. So nice to see a student graduated from Qatar campus. Looking from your window in Georgetown across the street, I am sure you see QSTP, Qatar Scientific Technology Park. So it is there, I assure you. Things are going as planned to be ready to fulfill our 2030 vision to shift from the carbohydrates to the knowledge-based economy. We are on right track. Nothing distract our internal vision from being implemented. Maybe of the recent situation on the surrounding, it's slowed down a little bit, but I assure you that it's on track. We have so many things in our pipeline, and we are working to achieve it. So no, the outside circumstances will not affect our program nor our implementation of the vision.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to see you.
Good. I'll stand here and try to project my voice instead of going there. With respect, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it. I think we all appreciate his presence here. My question has to do with Iran. And I wonder, what is Qatar's attitude towards Iran, and in particular, a nuclear-equipped Iran? I appreciate your
Yep.
answer.
Thank you very much. Iran is our neighbor. We share so many things with Iran, and we are among the countries who welcome the interim agreement with the 5+1. And we always say that Iran has the right for a peace program, nuclear for a peace purposes. No one can change geography. They are our neighbors. We share, in fact, we share a gas field between us and Iran. Though we have difference with Iran, our difference with Iran is about Syria. Yes, we have good relation, but we have difference. It's maybe it's sound complicated, but this is the fact. We have to live together. We have to live in peace. So it's better enhancing the relation. We are there together forever. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jeff.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Wazir AlAttiyah, my name is Jeff Laurenti. I'm an MPA 40 years on. And your remarks added actually a domestic policy question to the foreign policy question I had wanted to pose to you. Because when you spoke of how a century ago you would have seen a different kind of student audience here than we see today, and we now have incorporated a full diversity into American society, I wonder how you see Qatari society evolving. You have 280,000 Qatari citizens, 1.5 million expats, 2/3 of them from the South Asian continent. To what degree is there a pathway for all of this huge population that you have in Qatar from abroad working, having families and such, to be integrated into Qatari society, or is that viewed as politically impossible? So if you could share with us your sense of where Qatari diversity may or may not go in the future. And then the foreign policy question, which in a sense follows on the one just before, looking across the Gulf. Americans have already put Afghanistan out of mind. We've been fighting there for 12 years. It's been a frustrating slog. As you look at Afghanistan now, between Pakistani interests, perhaps Iranians, as the American military withdrawal is completed, what do you see as the balance between that region's Islamic extremists and the Taliban and the other forces in Afghan society? What are the interests that, as you see, the Pakistanis have in the direction? Can this Republican format, maybe it's just window dressing, in Kabul survive after our Western withdrawal?
Thank you, sir. Speaking about the domestic and Qatar, I think the best to explain to you how things goes in Qatar, you need to pay me a visit there.
I'll take you up on it. On Qatar Air.
Qatar is a very welcoming country. I mean, diversity, and it's open to everyone. And to be honest with you, we have benefit a lot from this diversity. Today in Qatar, you can see we have, just from the United States, we have 6 universities. 6, and this is why I was hoping to see Princeton too next year. And we have a French university, we have a German system, education system, we have, so we encourage this, because this is what will enrich our country, and we believe in this. From Qatar going to Afghanistan, we encourage dialogue. We are, as you know, working with all parties to encourage them to conclude an agreement. And this is why we have opened a Taliban office, a representative office in Qatar, and bring them, try to bridge between them and our friends, the American. So to reach an agreement through dialogue. It's been long now since we are seeing war and a lot of bloodshed in Afghanistan. It is about time now to solve it, as I said earlier, over the table. And this is what we are trying to do. I think this is the only way out, through dialogue.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you for coming to speak with us. My name is Anya Gershoff, and my question is about soccer, particularly your Aspire program in Africa. As I understand it, it's for the development of your national team in hopes of competing in the 2022 World Cup. But I was wondering if you saw any implications for that program with African development down the road.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part.
I was just wondering what you thought the implications of your guys' Aspire program is for African development in the future.
Okay, if I understand your question right, I believe you know something about Aspire, yes?
Yep.
Yeah. I think Aspire, this is, by the way, Aspire is the sport academy which been, which been founded in Qatar. One of their major role is to reach out. as I said also in my speech, to the people who are less fortunate than us. And try to help, try to build facility to them and give them environment where they can, find themselves and elaborate on their talent. Also, our plan to 2022 World Cup is that to dismantle after the games, to dismantle some of the stadiums and to shift them to countries where most need to have some stadiums. This is the plan. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Seamus Daniels, and I'm a junior in the Wilson School. And so my question is, given the rise of the Islamic State in the Middle East, much international attention has been paid to financing of terrorism, and there have been many reports that indicate private financing coming from Qatar. What has the Qatari government done to kind of curb this financing and funding for terrorist groups in the region?
Thank you. Qatar has a very tough law in this thing. Qatar is a member of the 28 counter-terrorism conference, which include, as I said earlier, the United States and Saudi Arabia. And there is pretty tough laws on this. And it's not easy for someone to use Qatar as a platform for money laundering or supporting terrorist groups. But if we find so, then they will be tried according to this tough law, as I said. Thank you.
Daniel, microphone, please. Sure.
Daniel Basis with Reuters News. I wanted to know, on that student's last question, did Qatar, the government, pay for the release of the Fijian UN peacekeepers? And do you think it's wrong to pay for the release of hostages? And secondly, in Libya, I'd like to know, what would Qatar's reaction be if an Islamist group took control of Libya with its oil wealth and used that wealth to fund the creation of an Islamic caliphate?
Okay, let me begin with your first part of the question. No, Qatar does not pay ransoms. And again, Qatar will not apologize for any soul or life we saved in Syria. And if we can mediate to save another life, we will do so. The Fijian was working closely with us, so they saw our steps and movement to release their soldiers. And we don't believe in paying ransoms, because this is, another way of fueling, if you may call it, supporting from a back door, and this is we don't do. Secondly, it's a hypothetical question, about Libya, because we cannot criticize or classify people without sitting with them and listening to them. In Libya, it is more of a tribe-oriented issue rather than, religious, dispute or issue. So we in Qatar always encourage the Libyan to have their own dialogue with the help of their neighboring countries. It was very important to include these 6 neighboring countries, at least to be as a, I cannot say supervise them, but at least to be involved with them, because they all share the same border and they all share the same worries. But Libya is not as people see it from a distance. I am optimistic. I am not so worried if we can encourage them to sit and have their dialogue and have their country back together. This is how we see Libya. Thank you.
Hi, my name is George Papadimitriou, and I'm a junior in the Woodrow Wilson School. I want to thank you for your words today, and also to thank you for your comments about the Syrian Archbishop. My question is kind of in a similar vein. With the increasing violence across the entire Middle East, and with the increasing marginalization of Christian communities, particularly in Aleppo and also Baghdad, what do you think is the future of Christianity in the Middle East? Does it have a future?
This is a very good question. Thank you very much. In fact, I'll tell you something. The Christian in the Middle East they are Arabs, and this is their homeland. And we don't want to see someone to encourage them to leave the Middle East. They are part of that land, and they are part of that mosaic. So encouraging them, I believe, encourage them to leave and to immigrate. This is the biggest mistake we are committing. They should stay and they should live with the other because they are treasure to the Middle East, and the Middle Eastern should not let go of them easily. This is how we look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sander Solstein. Thank you so much for coming today and talking to us. My question is the following. You speak of reaching a political settlement with regards to Syria. And I was wondering which specific steps is your government undertaking to reach such a settlement, and which steps would you like to take?
This is in Syria?
Yes.
Well, we work among another friend of Syria group. We cannot work alone in Syria. And what we would like to see is a political solution. Started in Geneva, but unfortunately it failed. The people of Syria has a demand, and their demand is that the regime should leave. So, but they don't want to dismantle all the institutions in Syria. And this is a good point to start from. They don't want to kick out everyone who stood by the regime until today. This is not true. So what I'm saying is that a friend of Syria, or if you may call them London 11, the core group London 11, they should work together with other friends who can, like Russia, the Russian, the Iranian, to enforce a political solution. I think this is the only way out today. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, since this is a historic day today, I don't know many of you think of this like that, but it's the 29th September of 2014. And it's the end of an era, and I'm very glad to have you here. It's the end of the era of Hamid Karzai in Afghanistan. We have the inauguration today of Ashraf Ghani, and but I prefer to be here. It's the end of an era of the Afghanistan and the US and the Middle East countries as we know it. And I wanted on this day ask you the future role of the Taliban in Afghanistan. And since we have now from more and more informed sources the possibility of an increasing cohabitation and cooperation between ISIS and Taliban, what do you think Qatar could do, and what do you think Qatar would ask its friends to do? Because by just sitting together, well, we tried this with the Taliban, I myself met several of them, many years. The outcome wasn't particularly encouraging if I look at the internal Afghan situation.
Thank you, Professor. We already start doing this between Taliban and our friends, the American, because they have to work out the aftermath preparation. And Taliban is a part of Afghanistan. They are Afghan. You cannot go and throw them on the sea. They will be there forever. So the best thing to do is to come and sit down and have an agreement which will draw the roadmap of Afghanistan, especially after leaving Afghanistan. after this unfortunate life lost by from the American in Afghanistan, if they pull out and then the chaos goes back again, then we didn't do anything. So it's best to sit down with all fictions and have a proper agreement which gives all Afghanis the right to enjoy their country and share the responsibility.
Well, media intermediary, negotiator, and working for, as I said, for self-determination and human dignity. Liechtenstein, those are also things.
Yes,
With all these, thank you.
Very active. Thank you.
Thank you.